What's good, everybody? As your tried and true friendly neighborhood Spanish UFC channel, it is my responsibility, as it is of any MMA YouTuber, to give you the opportunity to buy the stock of some niche, unknown MMA prospects coming from my country, the country of Spain. As a semi-professional MMA larper, I know how important it is for the ego, for the soul, for the happiness of the average UFC fan to be able to be on the bandwagon before anyone else. So in this video, I'm going to provide for you a few elite prospects that will make you look like a hardcore in front of all your little boyfriends, alright? Let's get right into it with the first prospect. I'm going to have some tape rolling throughout this whole video so you guys can see what I'm talking about, alright? Fabia Sintes. Now here's someone that you can just straight up say, he's going to be next because he's literally just got signed by the UFC and he's going to be fighting on that Paris card with Hooker, with Parnas and a bunch of random French people. He's 32. He has an 11-3 record. He fights in the flyweight division, which is super stacked in the UFC. He lost his second and third pro fights, and then on some JDM shit, he went on a win streak. He lost by decision in 2023, but ever since then, 3 years later, he's still undefeated. Currently on a 7-fight win streak, and he's been fighting in Toporia's WoW promotion. I think it's Way of Warrior, which is basically the best promotion we have here in Spain. Like, we have AFL, we have we have random bullshit, alright? But in Spain, the WoW promotion, AFL, those are the best promotions we have in this country, alright? Initially, watching tape on Fabia, it became very apparent that this guy's not the cleanest on the feet. He's not the quickest on the ground. Like, physically, he doesn't have these straights that make him impressive in any real way, but he has really good composure. He keeps, like, his blood super chill, like, he's very cold-blooded. He has really good fight IQ and just elite cardio, right? Watching the fights, what stood out to me was the elite submission defense. He got out of a really good guillotine in one of his last fights, and he just, like, ended up getting on top, causing good damage, and that's something that he's done a couple times in his career. He's in submissions, they look real bad, and he ends up getting out and, like, using them to get to a better position. His pressure on the feet reminds me a lot of how DDP fights when he's, like, really sloppy, but he's always putting the gas on. He's always, like, especially if your opponents have a worse gas tank than you, if they're not as they can't go 5 rounds like you, it's gonna be super effective because you're constantly pushing the pace, constantly putting the pressure on them. And if you guys have ever fought before, being on the back foot tires you way more than going forward and going attacking. At flyweight, especially this type of style, middleweight, you can critique it. For example, Sean Strickland, who's always going forward, got chinned by Alex Pereira at middleweight. You can kind of critique it because these guys have power. But at flyweight, there's like 2 people that can knock you out, right? It's like that little guy they just signed, I forget his name, and Manel Cap. So at flyweight, the Fabia Sintes, the DDP style of moving forward and just full willingness to just engage in the striking is going to be a lot more profitable than it would be in any of the other, higher weight classes. And then again, one thing that I really like about him is his willingness to full send submissions. Like, some people get on the back, they get on the front headlock, and they kind of tiptoe around it. If they can get their hands together, they're like, all right, I'm going to try for this. If I'm on the back, I'm going to maybe, like, threaten the rear naked, maybe threaten an armbar. But this guy full sends it, man. Sometimes it ends up with him being in bad positions, being on bottom. But, the constant submission threat he has, grabbing Kimuras, grabbing Americanas, doing whatever he can off the bottom, helps create scrambles. And overall, I think Fabia Sintes has shown some really good promise. He's sloppy on the feet, and I guess I'd worry about him, Kai Kara France, fucking Manel Cap, I'd be worried for them. But he has really good heart, and I think he has the potential to make it in the top 15, man. I think he's not going to be champion. He's not going to be a title contender. But I can see him being in that, Steve Erceg after fighting Pantoja. I can see him being in that Tim Elliott role. And hey, man, that's good. I mean, Tim Elliott was in the UFC for fucking 20, I don't know how long he's been there for, but he's been there forever. So if Fabia Sintes can get in there, can get signed, can win his debut fight in the UFC, I can see him making it pretty far in the rankings in the flyweight division. All right, on to the next prospect now, Costello Van Steenis. This guy, definitely the most experienced UFC prospect we have, all right? He's definitely the most experienced. He's probably also the least Spanish fighter. I think he's a Dutch or something. But he's 34. He's 18-3. He's fighting at the middleweight division, which is pretty weird for Spanish fighters. We usually occupy, like, Spanish people are kind of short. I think the average height here for a guy is like 5'7", 5'6". I think that might just be average worldwide, but we don't get a lot of big fighters. You go up in the division, and for example, a lot of African Americans end up being in the higher weight classes because they tend to be longer. A lot of the people coming from the Netherlands, like Costello Van Steenis, coming from Sweden, whatever. Like, these guys tend to be taller, tend to be up in the higher weight classes. But Costello Van Steenis, he's fighting at middleweight. He represents Spain, so he qualifies for this video. And since 2017, he's been fighting in Bellator. And 2 years ago, in 2024, he came to the PFL. So basically, he's fought in the two best promotions outside the UFC. He's currently the middleweight champ in the PFL. And he just extended his win streak to 4 this March. I think it was his first title defense. So if the UFC is going to sign him, it's going to be soon, right? It's going to be pretty soon. Skill-wise, you know, kind of like Fabia Sintes, man. I don't know. Us Spanish people, we're not the most skilled. I don't know what happened. I think Ilia Topuria is Georgian, so he got it from over there. But skill-wise, Costello, he's great grappling. He has great pressure. But the reason the UFC hasn't signed him yet probably is because his fight style is kind of boring, man. I know this video is supposed to be about prospects, about they're up next. I do think the UFC is going to sign him. But I just think like it's taken so long, even though he's been on such good streaks, because of his style, right? He's had some good performances, right? He had a really good submission to win the belt. I think he submitted Eblin in like the last 30 seconds of the 5th round with a rear naked choke. It was super hype. It was a big upset too. And in general, he does really good chasing the back. He has kind of a bad habit of accepting bottom position if he like slips off the back or ends up down there somehow. But on the feet, he kind of holds his own. He has a really good chin. He might be the biggest blockhead outside the UFC, but he has really buns head movement, as it is with most blockheads. He has really bad head movement. He's not that fast. He's kind of plotty, and his striking is kind of slow. He has gotten some KOs, but I feel like everyone's gotten some KOs, all right? If your grandma competes in MMA 23 times, she's going to get a couple knockouts in her career. But Costello Van Steenis, he's okay. I feel like he's okay enough in those departments, and what he excels at, which seems to be the trend with most MMA like guys from Spain, is that, man, we just got heart. We just got heart, and we have this willingness to fight. Like Van Steenis, he should be signed by the UFC based on his streak, based on his credentials, based on who he's beat. And I think they will sign him, but I don't know if he'll make it into the top 15. I think he'll be a good middleweight. He'll definitely be he'll have a winning record in the UFC division, especially with how many strikers there are. And I think the UFC could sign him and make some good, interesting matchups with some guys that are just unchinnable. Like, imagine Costello Van Steenis versus fucking Marvin Vettori for the debut, bro. 5 rounds into Apex, man. Dana White, you have my soul if you make that fight, because it's going to be super interesting watching someone, because again, Costello has never been chinned in his entire career. He has great cardio, he has great heart, he has like a strong mindset, good fight IQ. Put him in there against some striker, someone who can defend the takedown, is going to keep the fight on the feet, just make this like a slugfest, sock him, rock him, robots. I think that's going to be the role of Costello Van Steenis in the UFC. A better Marvin Vettori, which doesn't sound like a lot, but hey, man, Marvin Vettori got a title shot against Adesanya. People forget, man. All right, and on to the last prospect, and my favorite prospect by far of this video, Ignacio Campos. Now, who is this random? Looks like an NPC-generated fella, I know. Average Spanish man walking around the street. But this guy, he fights in the featherweight division. He's the youngest we've talked about so far at 29. He has an 8-2 record, which doesn't sound that crazy on paper, right? It actually sounds kind of shit. But he's currently fighting on the PFL. He's on a 2-fight win streak. And getting a couple more wins, I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC signs him, right? A couple more wins, he'd be 10-2, double digits. We love the double digits around here. And he would be, I think, one of these guys that the UFC calls to step in there on short notice. Like the typical, Ilia Topuria got to the UFC coming in against, who's the Moroccan fighter? Youssef Zalal. Coming in against Youssef Zalal, he came in on short notice after the opponent pulled out. And I can see Ignacio Campos kind of fulfilling the same role. Like imagine Alexandre Topuria set to fight somebody. I don't know. Imagine he said to fight Bryce Mitchell, pulls out, they bring Ignacio Campos in, right? I don't know if he'd win against Bryce Mitchell, but that's kind of the circumstance I can see them bringing him in. And what stands out for me, like why this guy's my favorite prospect, is how fast and how decisive this guy is with his movement. He's kind of like the opposite of what I was saying with Fabia and Costello. Campos is someone that makes really, really good movement and really good use of his explosive ability to strike. He creates scrambles, he dives on submissions, he just goes for like the nasty ass ground and pound. Like on the ground, he has really good pressure, really good guard passing game, as do all the other Spanish prospects I've talked about. but he's always hunting for his submissions, which is very important because, you know, Fabia, he does get submissions, but it's mostly off of his back, mostly off of jumping guillotines. But this guy, Ignacio Campos, he's going to be looking for that shit at all times, on top, on bottom, side control, whatever you want, man. From the crucifix, it don't matter. He's got it. Like, he's looking for them. He doesn't always get them, but he does look for them. And when he gets put into submissions himself, he manages to, like, you know, stay calm, fight the hands. He's in a really deep guillotine. He catches his breathing. He betters his position. He moves his hips to the other side. He does a really good job of just defending those submissions. Now, what separates him from the other two is his punches, man. His punches really sting. He has that really nice rotational power. And you guys know how much I love combination striking. Like, any fighter that throws combination strikes that aren't Max Holloway pitter-patter strikes, but like real rotational, bam, 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 like hooks from the hip, you know, like hit it, you throwing your whole spine into that shit. I love those fighters. I love fighters that do that. And Ignacio Campos is just that. If I had to pick out anything to critique, I'd say that mainly the fact that he's aggressive can get him caught, and it's actually what happened, you know, in his 2 losses. He's gotten caught, he's gotten countered a lot because he's always pushing forward, he's always, you know, swinging wild, kinda. But any 28-year-old right now fighting MMA has made those mistakes, will make those mistakes. You know, Logan Kavanagh got caught by Charles Johnson, Joshua Van got caught by Charles Johnson. You know, might be the GOAT, right? But man, he's just really entertaining. Ignacio Campos says he's really entertaining. He's really good in, you know, all of his fights have been super good to watch. He has great finishing instincts, and I think Campos is going to get a lot better when he gets signed. He's going to be those guys that in the regional scene, he looks good, but then in the UFC, he rises to the occasion, right? Some people fold, some people rise to the occasion. Shout out Anshul Jubli. I can see him going pretty far in the featherweight division too, because at the time he's going to get signed, he might be, like I said, 10-2, 11-2, 12-2 maybe. He's going to get signed into a featherweight division where there's going to be no Volk, right? There's going to be no, like, Sterling or anyone else that's old like that. And it's going to be kind of a division full of randoms. We're going to have Aaron Pico maybe still around. We're going to have Evloev maybe as a champ. We're going to have maybe John Silva out there. It's going to be a division where the top isn't as dominant. Because as we know, like, bro, Volkanovski's been dominating the featherweight division ever since I started watching this sport, and even before. So it's just going to be one of those situations where he's going to come into a nice featherweight division. He's going to be young. He's going to have good matchups. Like I can see them putting them against like Patricio Pitbull for his first fight. Ignacio Campos, Patricio Pitbull in the rankings, sliming out fucking 41-year-old Pitbull. Something like that, all right? But Ignacio Campos, great prospect. Keep an eye on this guy. My favorite guy out of these 3. So thank you guys for watching. As my duty, like I said, as a Spanish UFC MMA YouTuber, I gotta make this kind of video. I gotta tell you guys what's going on in the regional scene. I watched a lot of prospects, and honestly, most guys coming out of Spain low-key suck. I don't know if I missed anybody, but I watched like 8 or 9 prospects. I watched tape on them, I watched their fights, and no one impressed me like these 3, alright? So keep an eye on these 3 fighters. Let's see where they go from now on. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what country you're from, right? Maybe I'll do prospects from your country next. And yeah, man, thank you guys for watching. Ciao, ciao.